Clay Piero. Now we're going to continue on page 83 of the workbook, taking notes. This time we're focused on government structure as well as the scandals that took place during the Third French Republic. Here you see a poster that declares the Third French Republic. So let's take a look at an overview of the Third French Republic. Okay, so this government was politically very unstable. There was a rivalry between monarchists and republicans, as well as a number of scandals. You had the Bollinger Affair, the Panama Canal scandal, and the scandal that really rocked France and really split it apart was the Dreyfus Affair. Because there were so many factions, all governments were coalitions. Still, this government survived longer than any other regime since 1789. So let's look at the Constitution. The president was the head of state, but he had little political power. He had the right to dissolve the Chamber of Deputies with the support of the Senate. He had the right to nominate the new head of government, and he played an important role in foreign affairs. The Senate, these were elected by mayors and conciliars in the counties throughout France, nicknamed the Chamber of Agriculture because the countryside was overrepresented. Senators were elected every 9 years. This was a very conservative body. They were able to block progressive legislation. The Chamber of Deputies was chosen every 4 years. 600 members elected by universal male suffrage. There was no organized party system. Major political groups in the chamber included socialists, many of them were Marxists. You had moderate Republicans, which represented the middle class, radicals who were very anti-clerical, and monarchists who were Catholics and Bonapartists. So now we're going to take a look at the scandals. The first scandal, the Bollinger Affair. Most of the army was dominated by monarchists, but the Minister of War, General Georges Bollinger, was a Republican. Now a national figure, he was the focal point of conservative opposition to the Republican government. He was summoned to trial in a plot to overthrow the Republic, but he fled to Belgium, where in French flair and fashion, he committed suicide on the grave of his mistress. Bollinger's fall increased public confidence in the Republic. Okay, so the second scandal was the Panama Canal scandal. The president of the French company that worked on the Panama Canal, Ferdinand de Lesseps, he provided bribes to government officials to withhold news from the public that it was in serious economic debt. All but one of the accused went unpunished due to lack of evidence, and anti-Semitism was privilege. The results of this scandal proved to the public that the Republic was corrupt, and it also created a climate of anti-Semitism that would increase over time. The third scandal, and the most, I would argue, destructive for France, was the Dreyfus Affair. In 1894, a list of French military documents were found in the wastebasket of the German embassy in Paris. French counterintelligence suspected Captain Alfred Dreyfus from a wealthy Jewish family. He was one of the few Jews on the general staff. Dreyfus was tried, convicted of treason, and sent to Devil's Island in French New Guiana. The real culprit was a Major Esterhazy, whose handwriting was the same as on the military documents. The government tried him and found him not guilty in 2 days. Émile Zola published an article in a newspaper called J Accused. He accused the army of a mistrial and cover-up. The government prosecuted him for libel, found him guilty, and sentenced him to a year in prison. Here's a political cartoon. Maybe you might want to analyze that for a while and determine what you think the message is. Additionally, in your workbook on page 87, we have the article. We'll be looking at that later on today after you view this PowerPoint. So now you have two groups of people. You have the people that are for Dreyfus, and you have the people that are against Dreyfus. And so it reflected the divisions in French society. The Dreyfusards were anti-clericals, intellectuals, Freemasons, and socialists. For anti-Dreyfusards, the honor of the army was more important than Dreyfus's guilt or innocence. Their supporters were monarchists and army supporters and Catholics. And here we see a political cartoon calling Dreyfus a traitor. Once again, it was a fact that it was Esterhazy that was the true traitor, but, there was a segment of French population that felt it was more important to save the honor of the military than it was to save a man who was not guilty. Dreyfus finally got a new trial in 1899. He was brought back from Devil's Island. Devil's Island is a very harsh, difficult environment, and when he returned, he was white-haired and had clearly been broken by his experience in Devil's Island. He was found guilty again, but with extenuating circumstances. He was given a presidential pardon. He was exonerated completely in 1906, and he served honorably in World War I. He died in 1935. Okay, so this affair, the Dreyfus Affair, which really highlights the anti-Semitism that was prevalent in France, it leads to a call for a Jewish homeland. And we call that a Zionist movement. Motivated by the Dreyfus trial to write the book, The Jewish State, in 1896, Theodor Herzl created the first Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland. And he is known as the father of modern Zionism. He is on your key concept example explanations. He is an important historical figure, especially in the development and the drive for a Jewish homeland. It's called Zionism. The anti-clerical Republican left took power in the National Assembly in 1879. This anti-Catholicism was a remnant of the French Revolution. They stayed in power until 1914. We had a series of laws called the Ferry Laws, named after Jules Ferry, one of the ablest politicians of the Third Republic. He provided the first major attempt at educational reform. Only the state could grant degrees, free public education in primary schools. Religious instruction was excluded from state school curriculum. Unauthorized religious orders were forbidden to teach. Authorized Catholic orders could not teach in French public schools. State improved training of teachers. Okay, so now we're going to take a quick look at foreign policy. To regain the province of Alsace-and-Lorraine that the French lost to Germany in 1871 was a big goal. To end isolation in international affairs after the Franco-Prussian War was another goal. And to expand the colonial empire and regain some of the prestige lost after the Franco-Prussian War. These were all goals of the French foreign policy. The French considered the loss of Alsace-Lorraine to the Germans or Prussians in the Franco-Prussian War to be hugely traumatizing, and they had, as I said, a goal of getting that land back. The empire set up under the Third Republic was the greatest France had ever possessed. Jules Ferry played a huge role in French empire building. Ironically, 2/3 of the missionary priests outside Europe were French. By 1914, France was the second largest colonial power in the world and the largest in Africa. So here we have all of the green represent colonies that the French had established. That's the end of our PowerPoint presentation on France and the Third Republic. After you're done viewing, listening to the PowerPoint here, if you could turn to page 89 in your workbook, and it has some details about 19th century racism and anti-Semitism in Europe that will be important for you to know.